our next guest started acting at the age of 6. In 1993, he got a big break as the lead in the hit Disney film Air Bud, and over the course of his career, he's shown tremendous ambition in the projects he's chosen, delivering stellar work in Zack Snyder's sensational reworking of George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, as Felicity Huffman's teenage runaway in the moving Transamerica, and in his latest role opposite Jim Sturgis and Ben Kingsley in the gripping IRA thriller 50 Dead Men Walking. Defying expectations at every turn, his upcoming projects include a reworking of the classic Bonnie and Clyde, where he will play none other than Clyde Barrow. And it is a tremendous pleasure to welcome actor Kevin Zegers to Movie Geeks United. Kevin, are you with us?
Yeah, hey guys, what's up?
Hey, what's up?
Hey Kevin, how are you? Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you're from Canada, right? You grew up in Canada?
Yeah. I grew up and started acting in Canada in a little town called Woodstock, which is about 2 hours outside of Toronto, and have been living in LA since I was about 17, so 7 years now.
Did you come from a particularly creative family?
No, actually, I guess I would say sort of the opposite of that. My dad's a miner. He works in a lime quarry, and my mom was a hair stylist. So, you know, they were just sort of, it was never really something that was advocated in our house. It was just sort of something that I think I always enjoyed. And when you said 93, God, that's a long time ago. But I think, I think having done it since I was a younger guy, it just sort of, I don't really remember the moment that I decided, hey, I'm interested in this, or hey, right. I have the need that I have now, or as an outlet to sort of be creative. I don't really remember that moment. I just sort of have always been doing it. So
you kind of fell into it and you just kept doing it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I did it primarily because it was fun, and when you're 11, 12, 13, I think it's just it's attention and it's nice and you get to travel, and but I think not until I moved here by myself and I think started living a real life, a life on my own, and right. Sort of where I had to figure out whether I wanted to pursue being a really good actor or just sort of work, and I think my decision sort of happened probably while I was doing Transamerica, and kind of from that point on, I've just kind of said I'm going to have a go at it. I'm going to, I don't think that there's anything wrong with sort of wanting to be a great actor.
Right. Well, no,
not at all.
But I think a lot of people are. It's much more in vogue right now to just be good and to sort of shut up and look good and go to work and be good. And I think that that's, at least in some circles, sort of all that's necessary or all that's desired of, especially someone my age. So I think, it's certainly a lot more work, and it's certainly not as easy a path to sort of go along when you want to do, the kind of movies that I like to do. It's not the most sought after path. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm. But when developing this passion for acting, are there films or performers that have been particularly influential to you?
Well, I can watch a movie. I think the thing that I like most about myself is that I'm like a huge fan of movies. I'm inspired and in awe of certain people that I just am aware of my own shortcomings enough to know that I could never be like. There's only ever going to be one Daniel Day-Lewis. He's just like a completely different kind of human being, and I think someone like Philip Seymour Hoffman, but I definitely don't necessarily follow the people whose careers I would like to emulate. It's more, I think, the opposite, people who just sort of have this natural inclination to be creative, and I also really seem to follow and like character actors a lot, people who can, I always say to people that I work with, somebody who can come in for, 3 or 4 scenes, sort of like Philip Seymour Hoffman, and just sort of like level the entire movie for 20 minutes, and people are kind of reeling for half an hour after he's long gone, and I think
Right.
for me there's something very powerful in that. This certainly being the lead in a movie is a whole different kind of pressure, but I like the idea of sort of coming in and sort of kicking the doors down and then leaving, and kind of that being its own thing as well.
Right.
Yeah. One of the things that I most admire about you, and I explained it a little bit in the intro, and you've talked about it here, is how you try to push yourself and you almost work to defy expectations and do something different than you've done before. And I have to know that you're young, you're attractive. You should see the emails I got from girls when I announced that you'd be on the show. So I know the kind of scripts you have to be getting. What is your criteria for a project, for choosing a project nowadays?
I think probably to the frustration of a lot of the people that work with me, I think it's I don't even know if it's that well defined. I think it's just kind of something that I feel. I'm reading a script right now, and it's probably the least likely, the one that people who work with me, my agents or my managers or whatever, would be least likely to say, like, oh, that's the one. But, it's just, I feel something. It's something that, generally it's something that terrifies me. That's the first thing. It's something that, like, I know the first day on set I'm going to be, terrified.
Right.
And then I think, certainly meeting the filmmaker is, because I think people lose sight of the fact that as an actor you kind of, doesn't matter, the greatest performances you've ever seen could have very easily been completely screwed up by poor directing or poor editing or whatever. I think, a lot of, so I think putting your life, for all intents and purposes, for a few months in somebody else's hands is a very sort of, it's something that I take pretty seriously, because I just, once I'm done, sure, I can go on and do the next movie or whatever, but they're sitting there sort of putting the music together, cutting it together, and they could end up making you look like a complete jackass.
Yeah,
and
it's a huge
for
gamble,
me, that's,
I would imagine.
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but I think mostly it's that first thing that I said, which is I haven't done it before. Maybe people wouldn't want me to do it, which there's I guess a quality that I have, which is sort of like, who is anyone else to say what I'm capable of doing, or what I should do or what I shouldn't, and I'm also not, I don't plan on being around for 3 years. That's like not the goal. I plan on doing this for the very long foreseeable future. So there's no rush. I'm not in a rush to give a performance that, or do something that sort of defines myself yet. I'm still sort of figuring it out, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. I'm kind of at peace with that right now. So.
Okay.
Well, what has this life taught you about yourself, and this work? What has it taught you about yourself so far?
Well, I think, to be totally honest, if I were to sort of do it all over again, I would probably choose another profession. I'm far too self-critical, and it's actually not a great mental, it's not good for my mental well-being to do what I do, because I think I'm constantly, I need to be doing something at all times, and unfortunately, because I am a little bit picky, I don't work as much as I'd like to or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I've definitely learned that this is a job just sort of like any other, and I sort of try to treat it as such. And a lot of people don't feel that way, and I think especially a lot of the people that I sort of came up with, I'm very observant. I try to be, at least, and sort of try to not make some of the same mistakes that other people do. And I want to make a career of this. I want to be able to raise my family with this, and also be proud of work that I'm doing. So
yeah.
That's I guess the kind of plan. I don't know what. Yeah, but if I had to do it all over again, I would probably go to film school and maybe direct, which is what I think I'd ideally like to end up doing anyway. But certainly keep me more engaged for longer periods of time, rather than sitting here sort of going over every mistake I may have made or whatever. So that's that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's a stumbling block for an actor, isn't it? Because you need to be not. I think the key is to not be self-conscious like that, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that I have, unfortunately, a lot of qualities that are sort of stumbling blocks, that are just sort of personally about myself, that I think I've done it maybe a little bit too long, that the novelty of of the making of a film is not something that I get off on the way that a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. I'm comfortable doing it, and I'm more comfortable on set probably than I am in my personal life, but it doesn't get me going the way that it does other people. It's a far more sort of critical process for me. It's a very okay, now I have a job, so I can start doing my sort of preparatory stuff and getting ready to build this character. But it's very sort of X's and O's for me. It's not as magical, I suppose, as it is for some people, and I wish it was, but I think
settled into a routine with each performance? Like you have a set routine that you go about?
A process, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm, which is again why when you mentioned it earlier, I could never be Daniel Day-Lewis, because there's something that happens, there's something that goes on with him that I don't think that my body or my mind would allow to happen without it being very aware of it. So I think which is why I think I'll probably be a much better director than I am an actor. But
I think you're a fantastic actor. I wasn't questioning your ability.
No one's questioning your, and especially a very varied career so far too. Very diverse films.
And you mentioned that Transamerica was a turning point for you, and I know that you campaigned for that role, so you must have recognized that potential early on. What was that potential that you saw?
Well, I was about to just be done with the whole thing in general. I was just going to stop acting. I was like, this is not for me, and that was I read one script and I was like, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to get this movie, because this is the kind of movie that I like. And if it works out, great, and if it doesn't, then I'll find something else to do. And yeah, I met with Duncan, the director, and he said, yeah, no, sorry about that. Like, I don't want, the kid from Air Bud starring in this very serious, really cool movie, and which I completely understood, but at the same point I kind of said, well, I need to clearly show him that I'm capable, and so I put myself on tape, and then I had a few phone conversations with him, and just kind of generally was a pest for a while, and then I sort of ended up there, and I ended up in New York with the two of them, and throughout that whole process, all of the crap that had built up over sort of 10 years of what I thought was acting, which really wasn't, which was just sort of, showing up and saying lines and winking at the camera, which is not, was sort of torn down and by both of them, and that was the first time that I realized that there's a whole lot more to figure out, and I was nowhere near where I thought I was, and I think that was a good experience for me.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of things now, but what I definitely know is that on any given day, there's any number of people who are much better or much more suited for a certain thing. But what I do know is that I at least pride myself on, I'm probably the hardest worker when it comes to a film. So I think the reason that I probably continue to work is people generally know what they get with me when they hire me. Is I'm from the second that that I know that I'm doing it is sort of full bore for as long as they need me. So
right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how did 50 Dead Men Walking come about for you?
Well, I did a movie with Kari, the director, in Canada right after I did Transamerica. I did this movie called Stone Angel with
Ellen Burstyn, right? And
yes,
Ellen Page.
Ellen Burstyn and Ellen Page, yeah. And
I like them. I saw that a couple years ago. That was a good movie.
Yeah. So, and we were just about to finish filming, and she's like, "I'm going to go to Belfast and do this movie about the IRA." I was like, "Cool, that's great." And I didn't really believe her because everyone says they've got their next thing, and then she called a few months later, and she's like, "So, I want you to come with me." And there was some sort of movement in who was going to play what character, and she just knew that she wanted me to go with her, and we had sort of struck up a friendship. And then Sir Ben came on, and then Sturgis came on, and it sort of just fluidly came together, and I just ended up in Belfast, sort of trying to get really fat and trying to like build this guy who I was sort of in a personal space of like giving everyone the finger at that point too, which was like, I'm not going to do all this stuff that everyone wants me to do. I'm going to like go and do my job, and I think that's really what this whole the whole job sort of represented for me, was like a good turning point in my life, which was like I want to do this the way I want to do it, and it needs to be personal. And I think the reason I'm proud of this movie and the performance was it was sort of, it went a little too far for personally and professionally, and I think I like that. I like that it just sort of like it messed with my life in a way that work had never done before, and I think the fruits of that labor sort of end up somewhere on the film, hopefully. So,
well, you had to. I would think that you had to absorb the culture of Ireland where you were shooting. What did that environment give to you?
You know, I have to say, I came back a completely different person. There's really no room for. Arrogance is not the word, because I don't think that I was that. There's a lot of stuff that I think just living in LA and doing what I do, it like sort of accumulates in your life, and there's really no room for that there. It's very sort of, people go to work and they do their bank job or whatever it is that they do, and then at 4 o'clock everything closes and everyone like comes together, and there's like a sense of community, and no one talks about what they did at work, or, you know, it's just sort of like this enormous sense of like, enough with everything else, let's just like, we're happy to be alive. We're like, you know, there's not bullets buzzing by our heads, and there's not helicopters overhead, so there's like and I think I really got off on that. I think both Jim and I did, was, you know, Jim was and is still sort of going through that whole whirlwind of like what he's going through, and me on a completely different scale was going through something similar personally, and I think we both sort of ended up, you know, at some house party in Belfast, sort of really exhaling for the first time in a while, and sort of saying like, I like being away. We were so not reachable to anyone else. We were doing our accents and like going out and getting ready to work really hard. And I think that sometimes it's nice to be away, and sometimes it's nice to be in a place where they don't know the difference between, you know, a video camera that someone has on the street and a camera that we're using to shoot the film, and it was kind of nice. It was nice to feel out of place, but at the same time feel welcomed and given the opportunity to show these people, you know, for at least who we thought that they were.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about the story, because this is based on a true story, correct?
Yeah, it's based on this book. I think the book was called Man on the Run. This guy named Martin McGartland, so the story goes, he basically started working as a double agent. He was in the IRA, and he was also working for the British government, informing them of these impending attacks or whatever. And the story, or the film at least, goes that there's sort of two sides pulling at him, not his sympathy for, I guess, my side or my character, which is sort of the IRA side, and then Sir Ben's side, which is sort of, you know, he obviously doesn't want people, you know, exploding in bars. And so I think that the thing he struggles with most is kind of figuring out which side he sort of falls on. And the thing that I wanted to do, and I know that Sir Ben wanted to do also, was to sort of not present either side in a way that was more charming than the other, or more. It shouldn't appear to be an easy decision. And I think my instinct to not make, you know, my character and everything that my character represents ugly and dark, and, you know, there has to be something likable and inherently appealing and homey feeling about this guy, and that's sort of, you know, it shouldn't have been an easy decision, and I don't think that it was. So
Yeah, yeah. So your character though, Sean, it's obviously based on a real person, correct?
Yeah.
Do you feel like any kind of added responsibility when you're playing someone from real life as opposed to a fictional character?
Yeah. I mean, I think I put a lot of pressure on myself in general when it comes to work. So I wouldn't say that it affects me when I'm working. I think more than any other factor, I think I feel responsibility to the director and the writer. I very much feel like I'm there to service the story, and that's fine with me. And so it didn't really make a difference, to be totally honest. I definitely felt a responsibility to the people of Belfast. I felt like getting the accent proper and the walk and the whole deal was like something that they can smell from a mile away. And both Jim and I kind of wanted to have it be completely authentic. And so for me, that was, I feel more of a responsibility to, because I actually never met the guy who I played. I met, I think, people who were like him, but I don't think I actually ever, and maybe I did, but maybe he didn't introduce himself to me as that guy. But I think I just, I definitely overthink everything, and I feel responsibility to just about everyone to kind of do whatever I can. So
I have to ask you about the latest project before I let you go, because I've gotten the emails that I've been sent. They've all asked me to ask about this project because I guess it's a source of tremendous fascination. The story of Bonnie and Clyde. What I know you're about to start production on that. What direction is this story taking?
Well, it's certainly a very different story. It's obviously the same people, but my hesitation, I suppose, at first was, that's a tricky movie to remake, if at all, ever, And
it is. I would imagine there's a lot of trepidation to filling in those shoes.
So upon talking with Tanya, who is, I actually think, a fantastic director, this woman who's doing it, and Hillary a couple of times, I think the story is definitely much, much different. It's telling a very, it's actually a much more, I guess, autobiographical story of the last little bits of their life. And, but listen, I'm terrified, but, I think maybe dumbly enough, that's, like I said earlier, that's sort of what I look for. So I'm certainly going to go in swinging. I don't think that there's any reason not to. I also don't know exactly when we're going to start shooting. Could be this year. It may not be until next year. So as far as I'm concerned, there's a couple other things that I'm going to do before that. So I haven't really buckled down and sort of started completely digesting the magnitude, I suppose, of that endeavor.
Yeah, but that is a common theme, and you just mentioned it, and you mentioned it earlier about facing your fear when you accept a role. That's an important part of the process for you, and I'm wondering, when you look at a 50 Dead Men Walking, what is the fear? What is that fear?
Well, for me, for that movie, I'm a vain person. I own that, and I think not until I was there did I fully own it. And being as naked and as sort of like broken down as I've ever been, because I've been on set my whole life. I'm used to like hair and makeup, and there's like a whole process that goes on that guys or girls, it's very different. And that movie was that for me. I was very uncomfortable in my own skin at that time, and I think that the best way for me to show it was to actually be very uncomfortable in my own skin. And so, I know I'm not doing my job if I'm not on set with some sense of huge anxiety that I'm about to completely mess it up. And the day that I have that feeling, I'll stop doing it. I think the thing that I've learned from people like Sir Ben and people like Vince D'Onofrio and these people that I've been so fortunate to work with is like they're always terrified. And Sir Ben says something so vivid before we started shooting, which was like, we all have the exact same amount of experience with this project.
Right.
There's no one has a head up. He said it doesn't matter what I've done, what Jim's done, what you've done, Kevin. Like none of it matters. We all have the exact same experience with this story and with these characters combined. So what are we really talking about? There's no need for. So he said he's always terrified. There's always that sense of anticipation, and I think the second that goes away, I think you're just phoning it in, and you should probably be doing something else. Certainly, I will be something else.
But where does the joy of the process come in for you?
I like the whole thing. I'm such a sadist. I'm like I like the anxiety. I like there's nothing better, there's nothing better than, it's like bungee jumping. There's nothing better than showing up, and I read this great interview with Dustin Hoffman, and he said something about, I'm still waiting for the day when I show up and someone calls me out that I have no idea what I'm doing. And I think there's like that feeling of, I'm like doing this, and there's like, so I think for me it's generally the first day that we're filming where I'm like doing something or in the midst of doing a scene, and I'm like, this guy never existed before today.
Right.
And I think for me that's what I get off on. And I get off on there's sort of like endless possibilities as to where I could end up or what I could end up doing. And none of them would surprise me. I could fall into 3 or 4 great movies and completely redefine myself, or I could, who knows? I think that's the sort of the unknown of it all is something I really like. Yeah. I like that I know I have a lot to learn and forward to figuring it out.